Welcome to the Multidose Podcast, your guide to authenticity, hosted by Multazim Zia. Brought to you by the Multipath. This podcast is more than just insights, it's your dose of authenticity. Join us as experts, celebrities, influencers, and real people share their authentic knowledge like never before. From every episode, you can expect to learn something new and maybe explore a new perspective on your own life. To support our podcast, consider donating to our Patreon and share the love on social media. Every like, follow, comment, share, and penny counts. Find us on all streaming platforms and connect with us on our social media at The Multipath and at Multazim Zia. Your authenticity is just one dose away.
Jennifer, you have a history in healthcare, and as do I actually. By background, I am a physiotherapist, which is quite interesting. We'll come on to that conversation. We also have an involvement in improv, which is very interesting as well. How do you combine them both? What got you to improv and healthcare?
So I love this question. And first of all, thank you for inviting me to be on your show. I'm really happy to meet you. Improv, improv as a tool, I think in life, be it in business, be it in personal relations, I think also in healthcare and in my field, elder care, they're absolutely like a common red thread. And I think if you really break it down into the components of it, it's really about being in the present. So when you perform the art of improv comedy, you create something from nothing. And in order to do that, you have to be hyper present, you have to listen well, and you have to have a servant mindset. So it's none of this diva behavior, like you're not there to be a star, you're there to serve other people in your ensemble. And I think that's really a great link to how we look at it in healthcare is that you're there to to listen to your patients, so you hear what their symptoms are, um, do you cough when you sit? Do you cough when you stand? So, for example, are you breathless when you're moving around? Are you breathless sitting in a chair? You always want to keep adding on to something. You listen, you're present, you serve them well. And the other thing in improv is we try to be iterative and go very quickly. If we're going to fail, we fail with joy, we fail fast, and we keep going. And I think that's very much the way it is hit and miss in healthcare is it's very much art and science, and that we're constantly saying, okay, well, this is a new picture of this patient that's in front of us. This is a new circumstance in their life from a social perspective. This is a new circumstance from a symptomatology. So all these tools of improv, I think, keep you hyper present and make you a better healthcare provider as well.
Amazing. I do agree with you on the fact that healthcare is and it's somewhat improvised as well because, like I said, by background, I started off as a physiotherapist. I still this is a physiotherapist, and I always say to my clients, it's trial and error, trial and error. If we go, we fail, no problem, we'll change it. We'll if we keep failing, we'll keep changing it. If it's successful, we'll keep building on it. That's how it works in healthcare. Now, tell me with your improvisation, I think you said you teach it and you also uh, practice it as well. What's the difference between teaching improvisation and practicing improvisation? And I will come back to how this will again relate to your healthcare field. So just tell me the difference first.
So the difference between teaching and performing, for example, and maybe I can even add teaching in different environments. So for example, I teach in a theater school where people sign up and say, I want to do this as an art form. And so I teach them as their artists who are
Hmm.
preparing to do something on a stage. I also teach it for people who are, for example, in a corporate environment who are wanting to, maybe they've read a Harvard Business Review that says, if you use these tools of improv, you can become a better leader. So we really focus on improv through leadership. That's also what we talk about in the TED Talks, for example.
Hmm.
And I think in the world of caregiving, it's how do you, again, think about becoming hyper present. And it's almost as if, so in care, as improv for caregivers, it's again, listening, it's serving, it's yes-anding. And I think if you're doing it almost therapeutically for patients themselves, so I've even taught it in nursing homes, for example, and I've watched the patients literally transform physically, almost transform intellectually, almost spiritually. So people that, you enter, they're hunched over, they're, the physical form that we're talking about, often maybe less empowered, maybe less independent, maybe more helpless.
Mhm.
I leave these little sessions I do with them. Literally, it looks like they've gained several centimeters in height. That you can see them smiling, you see them laughing, you see them interacting. So I think in each of these, like again, teaching as an art form is one piece, teaching it for leadership, teaching it for healthcare,
Mhm.
teaching it for patients. They all have a red thread, which is you're working on being hyper present and really, again, creating something from nothing.
What got you into thinking that improvisation could work in healthcare? Because I think for me, I'll be completely frank, I never actually thought of it as improvisation in the sense of, like I
Yeah.
say, performing uh in my
Yeah.
practice until today, until our conversation actually, until you mentioned it. And then I thought, okay, that's an interesting way to perceive this. What made you think, or was it an active thought actually?
Yeah. So I think there's using it to like put on a little show. So
Hmm.
very often these kinds of environments in healthcare, we're not getting our patients into a stage where we want to have them do a performance. But when we improvise and when we're preparing to excuse me, when we are preparing to perform and we're also teaching, that's a word scramble, right? We
Yes.
do a lot of warm-ups. Like, like you're in the gym, walk, you do some stretching exercises. We do the same kind of stretching exercises in improv that get our brains ready. And ultimately, it's about turning off our amygdala a bit and really getting into our executive function so that we can have better connections and be able to think, like create new neurochemistry to create more connections so that we can create. So often what I'm doing is I'm using these warm-up exercises with our customers in my business in Viva Ballet, or also with patients we're using those. I think from a healthcare perspective, a lot of the listening exercises that we use are just genius for shortcutting rapport with a patient, also signaling to a patient that, hey, I'm listening to you, I'm connected. So I've just recently been going through some moments directly in healthcare through a family member that I'm caring for. And I'm using these tools every time I talk to the physical therapists, every time I
Mm.
talk to the caseworkers, every time I talk to
Yes.
the physicians. So, for example, a tool that we use when we are preparing, I'll play it with you if it's okay. We'll
Yes.
play it and
Yeah,
we'll see
for
it.
sure. Let's do it.
For the audience, we can see it live. So we do this game called headlines,
Yeah.
and you pretend as if you're like a BBC newsreader,
Oh,
and
I
you
hate
say
this.
whatever and you just say whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Like anything you say is right. So the point would be, I'll say, I'm sitting in a cabin, and you just say it with authority and strength. And so you would say the last word as that I said as your first word. So you would say
Oh,
cabin.
okay. Okay.
So I'm sitting in a cabin.
Cabins are brown.
Brown is the color of the earth.
Earth is round.
Exactly. So you get the formula. It's like a mathematical
Yes.
formula. You just keep using
You just
it.
keep
And
using the
what
same
I
word.
you just keep using it and you do it in a cycle. And so when you're doing that with your patients, it's a signal that I listened to every word you said. And I am
Hmm.
not inventing what I'm going to say, because very often in human communication, when we're talking, we're just talking to take turns to talk. We're
Yes.
really not great at listening. And so an
Hmm.
exercise like this, I'm listening to every word you say, and I won't say anything until you're finished. And I signal that I've listened to you by using the last word that you said as the first word of my sentence. So I find in healthcare, that is a great way to say, I'm paying attention to you, I'm connecting to you, I've got your back. It really is a great way to shortcut rapport and trust building.
You mentioned something there actually, not in that section, but you mentioned something about your TED Talks. Now, both of your TED Talks were also on improv. Tell the audience firstly how what your TED Talks are about. I'll obviously add the links in as well so we can actually watch it. And you briefly, I think you brushed over the fact that your TED Talks are relating to this as well. So, talk us through your TED Talk experience.
Absolutely. So the TED Talk experience, if you ever have done one or you wish to do
Yeah.
one, do it. It's a life-changing experience. And I think the beauty of it is it's not about you, it's about the idea. Everything is
Hmm.
in service of the idea. So if you have an idea that you're burning to share, everything is about that. And because I think often people think, oh, it's about being on the stage. It's really not. It's about sharing this cool idea that you have
Hmm.
and making that idea go as viral as possible. So my core idea for the first one was during COVID that improv is actually a tool of leadership in a time of COVID. And
Hmm.
so if it we took the rules of COVID, the rules of improv, which are say yes and, so agree,
Hmm.
say yes, and keep building, listen, serve the people that are on stage with you, and fail fast. So I used examples of how we were living that through the time of COVID, of being, being a servant leader, making lots of iterative choices about how you're going to do something. And if it fails, fail fast and fail what you want to keep moving. And I think especially that was, 4 years ago now, thinking about we were all separate from each other and we were trying desperately to maintain a great working culture. I was working in pharma and we were actually developing COVID medicines. So I think for us, like we had to be on top of our ability to synchronize very quickly, to get in one mind thinking, to be very well coordinated, although we were geographically dispersed, and find a way
Hmm.
to have a common experience. So I use these rules of improv with my team and we use that. So that's what the first one was about. The second one was really about just the first rule of improv, which is yes and how that can change your life. And I tell the story of how I used yes and I eliminated the words yes but. So often
Hmm.
if you're in a meeting and you hear people saying, "Oh, yes, yes, but that's a good idea. Yes, but," and then that kind of
Mm.
kills the energy, it kills the
Yes.
creativity. It kills the sense of building something together. But yes, and keeps building on something. So I
Hmm.
eliminated yes, but from my vocabulary. I used only yes, and I did it as a kind of experiment in my company for 3 months to see what would happen. So what I observed was we became more cohesive as a team using this, and I noticed it was contagious. Other people were
Hmm.
using it too. It was a great way to, I'd say, shortcut ideation sessions. And it was also a shortcut, so finding ways to be more creative, even as if we were geographically dispersed. And it was also a great way to diffuse conflict. So it's a signal to say, yes, I'm listening to you, and we may disagree with each other, but I've given you this chance to share
Hmm.
your point of view. And we have something that is in common that we can continue to build with, and
Yeah.
we're going to move on to something else. So that was really interesting, and that was the whole thing about how yes and can change your life.
And it does make sense because I've seen the yes and model quite a lot, and I cannot deny it's something that I've seen a few times. Stop saying yes, but say yes, and it's a case of it's similar to I get to go to work, I don't have to go to work. It's those wordplay that you change. You substitute one word out to make something, make the tone and the thought of something even better because you should be giving some gratitude to it. I had a question for you about this improv. Now, improv in itself means obviously improvisation. And by definition, improvisation essentially means, in layman's term, making it up on the spot. I'm assuming these techniques that you've applied to healthcare from improvisation also apply to other areas of professions and professional industries. Now, the reason I'm interested in this is because I just finished my law masters, and look, being in law and going down the legal field, how useful would it be for other professionals such as lawyers, barristers, and legal representatives, advocates to learn improvisation skills as part of their advocacy training?
Yeah. So what I'll say is any profession, be it law, be it entrepreneurship, be it healthcare,
Hmm.
the teaching, the list goes on. Any profession that deals with making a connection with another human and having to negotiate, discuss, co-create, agree, build something together, which is kind of like the way we work as humans, right? This is
Yes.
kind of the way that every interaction works. Every chance you have to do something like this, improv will help. And it will help in the following ways. It helps you make those connections with people quicker.
Hmm.
You can essentially shortcut rapport building. So if you need to get on the same page, if you need to signal I'm listening and you need to signal that I've heard you, if you need to signal that I'm being heard, if you need to signal that I'm here to serve you, you can trust me, these tools really, really help. And also, if you're co-creating something, so you mentioned advocacy, for example, if you're
Yes.
advocating in a community, you need to demonstrate that you are representing the people you're advocating. So how do you do that? You also have to co-create advocacy plans with others. This idea of yes-anding and co-creating with a group of people, that's the way we work. So, for example, when you think about improv as a tool, we work in ensembles. We don't work in
Hmm.
teams. So the difference in a team, like, okay, Jerry's going to do accounting, Bill's doing law, Susan does HR, Jen is the, I don't know, cleaning the toilets, whatever, right? Everyone has a lane that they're
Yeah.
in a team. In an ensemble, you have to jump in and do anything and everything. And very much the work of advocacy is very much ensemble work, because you have to kind of shift through different roles,
Yes.
because maybe you're low on staff, or maybe you have to find ways to really harness different ideas that come from different areas. So you really have this ensemble work. And in
Hmm.
our ensemble work, we say we're only as strong as the weakest member, and the weakest member is at any given time. So I might
Hmm.
be weak because I didn't hear, or I might be weak because I'm tired, but it doesn't mean that I'm always the weakest person. It could be at any given moment,
It
I
shifts.
could actually not be the highest performer. So again, if you keep revisiting, how are we going to connect? How are we going to demonstrate our listening? How are we going to co-create things together? And us also practice ideation. All of these tools would be really helpful. So for example, we did headlines as an example for your
Yes.
listeners, as a way to demonstrate listening and building rapport. Another thing that we would do is like a game we call five things. So we'll say it's like you sing five things, five things, five things, five things, five things. And I could say, Zia, like five things that are in your kitchen cabinet. And anything you say is right. So I'll do it, not to put pressure on you. So I'll say five things that are in my kitchen cabinet. So salt, one.
Mm.
Um, baking supplies, two. Breakfast cereal, three. A walrus, four.
Mm.
A side of bacon, five. So
Mm.
this is really simple. And when you do this, uh, it's a way of getting people to think a little bit outside the box about um, ideating, right? So the first two, it's super easy. You get to the third, maybe you're stretching. By the fourth, it's a little bit insane. By the fifth, it's a bit super insane. And that's
Mm.
also where you find your creative breakthroughs. Other
Yes.
things could be, I'm just looking around, you know, there's, that's gross, but like this old handheld phone, we could take examples of how might you practice ideation and breakthrough thinking together with your group that you're working on with an advocacy plan. So this is an old landline.
Hmm.
So we know that to be true. It's no longer an old landline, but now we can invent new things that it does. It could be that this is the secret passcode for all the gold in the world, or this could be the launch pad for the aliens who are coming here, or this could be a scoop that I'm going to use only to dig up the most precious baking things.
Mm.
You just keep reinventing something, and I think the point here is you might find something that sounds rather out of the box, untraditional, unconventional, and that's where your breakthrough thinking is coming from.
So something you said there, and it triggered a few thoughts in my head. You said obviously coming up with different variations and ideations of things. That is very, very true for entrepreneurship. So I started at least five businesses in the last 5 years, all of them in completely different fields, absolutely complete different fields. One was a clothing brand, one is a news and media business, one's a podcast, one is a physiotherapy clinic, and the other is photography and media business. Completely random and
Wow.
sporadic. Yes, completely random and
Incredible.
sporadic.
Oh my gosh, I love this. I
Yeah,
love
so
that you're
that's
using so many different brain for all these
yes.
businesses. That's incredible. Yeah.
Yes, and that's what I enjoy. I enjoy the element of being so diverse. And my first ever business was actually called Multi Vibes. And I called it that because my nickname is Multi. And I just wanted something, flamboyant. I was like 17 when I first started it. It was flamboyant. It was it was kind of vivacious. It was just my energy. It just multiplies everything. I wanted to do everything, and I still do that. The point of ideation is this, isn't it? As an entrepreneur, you have to be a bit of everything. You have to be a bit of, a bit of a designer, a bit of an artist, a bit of a musician, a bit of a lawyer, a bit of a businessman, a businesswoman. You have to be all
A bit
variations
of a
and all sorts.
therapist.
A
A
bit
bit
of a
of a
therapist.
therapist, right?
Yes, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. And you've got your own business, right? And you briefly again touched upon this earlier. And your business is all about elder care, and you mentioned that it helps the younger adults as well. Tell me a bit about how,
Mhm.
not how improvisation, but how you thought about this idea of starting this business that's helping two different areas, and what's the difference between your business and other elder care businesses?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. So, how did it start is that my founder approached me and said, I'm kicking around this idea. She knew that I'd had a long history in healthcare, in advocacy and access. And I immediately said yes.
Mm,
Because here's why. What we're doing is we know that 90% of people want to live in their houses, who are
mhm,
older, who are above the age of 70. They want to stay in their homes. We know that because it's more comfortable, it's where we want to live. So, they want to live in their homes, and also there's not a lot of capacity necessarily to
mhm,
move away. And it's prohibitively expensive. So we wanted to find ways to enable and support olders to stay at home. So there's a lot of medical care and social care, but actually a lot of the life care stuff that we need just to live at home. So making sure that the home is safe, doing home safety assessments, delivering food, providing rides, because very often at a certain age, you're no longer able to ride, or maybe
mm,
you've had an injury or disability and you can no longer drive, and also to clean your home and other things that are coming as well. So we know that there might be acute moments of medical care or therapeutic care, but there's still the life that is going. So we wanted to find a way to support that for the olders themselves. Now, often, there are many people I know like myself who are living thousands of miles away from their aging parents or aging
mhm,
relatives. So the help that we give to the youngers, often younger daughter, but adult children we'll call ourselves, is that I'm facing a situation where I'm preparing some support for an older relative. If I don't live in this community, I don't know who is good, who is trustworthy, who am I willing to let in the home of my aging parent or aging relative who is going to be able to have access to my relative. So is
mhm,
that a cleaner? Is that someone who's going to, again, do home modifications like occupational therapy types of modifications in a home? Or rides? How do I vet that for safety? So how are we different is that, we're female run, owned, and founded. We are caregivers ourselves, and we know that the most important quality is safety and is trustworthiness. So we go through extensive vetting procedures with existing businesses. We often see that there are companies that will bring in people to say, I'm going to hire you and you could be a buddy, or you can come and you can
mm,
do cleaning, and they just come work in the company. But we decided to work with established businesses because they're already established, insured, bonded. They have a history of doing the work. They're actually high quality services as well, and they're standalone business. So we're trying to find ways to absorb the most trustworthy, respectful, background checked, insured, bonded companies like this. If they match our values, we then actually give them extensive training on how they're going to interact with olders themselves. They have to pass a physical exam. And then they also have to pass a test visit where we watch them. Like, we have service under our eyes where we observe them and make sure that they're following all the checklists that we have. And on
wow.
top of that, once they're going to the home, they're observed. So we know when they're leaving, we know them when they're arriving, we're able to check in. So we can always give that reassurance to the adult children that the parents are safe, and also that for the older themselves, that we have eyes on them while those services are being provided. And as soon as they leave, the other nice service we have is we provide feedback on our older customer. And I'm sure as a therapist, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but I'll
Mm,
explain this for
yes.
your listeners, is that very often when older or any patient shows up to a clinical visit or a therapeutic visit, you have your best Academy Award winning performance on because
Yes.
you got your lipstick on, you're ready to do your therapy, you're feeling good, but maybe you go home and you absolutely collapse. And
Mm.
so what we're trying to pick up on is how is that older person performing in life on a daily basis, not just when they have these kind of all-star moments when they show up in the clinic. So we're able to give feedback on, is there anything of concern in the environment? Is there anything of concern in their behavior? And we can feed that back once they've, again, clicked the consent. We'll feed that back to the adult children so they can take action, have a conversation, and take action if they need to.
The stage is set, the spotlight is on. This is Doses of Authenticity, where the real stories unfold, every answer reveals a new layer, and the true self shines. Let the questioning begin.
What is your number one life philosophy?
Yes, and
How do you want to be remembered?
as someone who said yes and lived yes and with no regrets and fully ate every aspect of life and leaned in and just loved life to its fullest.
One change you would make to society?
I would have people be kinder to each other and realize that everyone's giving their absolute best. And because we acknowledge that everyone's giving their best and doing their best, be a little bit kinder on everyone else because everyone's going through something that's invisible, that's a battle that's invisible. So be a little bit kinder to everyone.
The best advice you have ever been given?
Love like there's no tomorrow, dance like no one's watching.
What makes you authentic and unique?
I am an internal optimist. I am a automatic refilling pack of energy. And I love with my whole heart, and I put that into everything that I do. And so by living with love, by harnessing my brain and my heart, I'm giving my absolute best, and I'm truly a giver.
Amazing. So, unfortunately, this comes to the end of our podcast. However, before we go, tell people where they can find you, where they can connect with you, and find some of your more of your work.
So thank you again for letting me be on your podcast. You can find me, Jennifer Kane Birkmose, on LinkedIn under Jennifer Kane Birkmose. You can find me on Instagram, JC Burke. For my company, Viva Valet, it's in the show notes, but it's www.vivavalet.com. And you can find us on all of our socials on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on not Snapchat, but on TikTok and on Instagram. We have channels. And again, if you are someone who is like me, who is an adult child of an aging relative, you can use our socials to get tips on how to care for your elders. We do this Take Action Tuesday, where it's just 1 minute of something that you can do every week to improve your caregiving ability and to get you prepared for some of the things that are ahead for you in your caregiving journey. And again, you can, if you're in the Chicago area in Illinois right now in July of 2024, you can also sign up and you can use our services.
Amazing, amazing. One more time, thank you very, very much for being on the podcast. This is where we'll put it to a close. It was an amazing podcast. I'm hoping the audience, and I'm sure the audience has taken away various actually valuable tips that they can use in their own life, and I think passed on forward to others or passed down to even the youngest as well. So thank you again for coming on the podcast.